Warning lights are flashing bright red for Donald Trump. Americans are becoming fed up with his presidency quickly, driven in large part by his disastrous handling of the economy. A new poll out today by The Economist and YouGov finds that Trump is at his lowest approval rating yet, with just 39% of Americans approving of his job as president. Among Americans under 29, just 20% of them approve of his job performance. That is a 30-point drop since February. 35% of Americans approve of his handling of jobs in the economy, and just 31% of Americans approve of his handling of inflation. Despite these indicators, Donald Trump has doubled and tripled down on his gimmicks and vision for the economy, continuing the tariffs that have raised costs for all Americans, refusing to use emergency funds to extend SNAP, and insisting on bailing out Argentinian farmers, of all humans, at the expense of American farmers at the behest of his political benefactors. And it might be costing him his previously lockstep loyalty from his own base. I want to bring into the conversation MSNBC senior contributing editor Michele Norris, also joining us, MSNBC columnist, author of the newsletter To the Contrary, Charlie Sykes. Charlie, there are a lot of theories out there for them. One of them, and I don't have a ton of evidence, is the declining influence of Steve Bannon, who used to speak out on behalf of MAGAs, who he, in his telling, relied on food stamps, relied on Medicaid. And he would publicly, and again, have no insight into the private interactions with him. I know John Carl reports that he weighed in on the minerals deal, but I'm not sure how many voters benefit from that. So I don't know if it's a lack of being in touch with the one person in his orbit who seemed to be in touch with the plight of the non-tech oligarch billionaire, but there seems to be either a lack of awareness or complete political indifference to their suffering.
Oh, I think it's complete political indifference at this point. You look at those numbers and they are horrific, but here's a question to ask yourself. Who is going to tell Donald Trump? Who in his orbit right now is going to say, look, you've got a real problem with this. These things are not working? Because right now he is really sort of high on the arrogance, the narcissism, the sense that he can continue to bulldoze through all the institutions. I mean, he has CEOs bringing him golden apples. What the president of South Korea gave him a crown today. So Donald Trump is really wrapped in his own hubris right now. And the populist rhetoric was always just sort of eyewash. The question is, who is he actually listening to? Who's around him? What are the billionaires and the millionaires at Mar-a-Lago telling him to do? And that's what he's listening to right now. In Donald Trump's mind, and, we talk about an alternative reality universe, Donald Trump has succeeded in creating an alternative reality for himself, where he thinks he has the wind at his back, that nobody can stop him, he'll get everything that he wants, when in fact, those numbers would suggest, massive cratering. You could also look at the support numbers of Hispanic voters who were crucial in 2025 and his collapse among them, or the independent voters on issue after issue. And then the symbolism is breaking against him. We have this, let them eat ballrooms moment at the moment when we're about to have these massive increases in healthcare premiums and the SNAP benefits being cut off. What are people talking about? They're talking about the fact that Donald Trump and his millionaire buddies are building a massive ballroom at the White House. So this is a moment where I think the hubris and the arrogance is kind of catching up with him a bit.
Michele, the White House has said that building the ballroom is their top priority. It's Donald Trump's top priority, was Ms. Leavitt's quote. So again, one of the, I think, distinctions between a first term and a second term is that which is most unpopular is most front and center. And it gets to what Charlie's talking about, the hubris. Jon Favreau, who I just interviewed for my podcast, said he's sort of over trying to figure out why he's doing something. We should just talk about the ramifications or the consequences. So I'm going to try to live that lesson. The ramifications of letting food stamps expire is that children will die. And again, some of them may be the children of people who voted for him. Some of them may, experience hunger and food insecurity and be malnourished. But between Medicaid cuts and the expiration of food stamps and the vaccine disinformation being pumped out by his whatever we're calling it, that RFK Jr. runs, people's lives, people's families are less safe than they were 1 year ago. What do you see as sort of the level of, or the lack of partisanship to sort of some of those realizations in this country?
Well, I just want to marinate on what you said, that building the ballroom is the number one priority. Let's just sit with that for a minute. How is that possible that that is the number one priority with everything that is going on right now? 1 in 5 American children rely on SNAP benefits. 1 in 5. That's a huge number. And while the administration tries to pretend that SNAP benefits gobble up a huge portion of the American budget, that's just simply not true. There are reserves that they could reach to. They could extend those benefits in November if they wanted to. They're just choosing not to. On the question of this being a partisan matter, I agree with Charlie. I think that we are at a hinge point right now. The pain is going to be real for Americans very soon, not just abstract. It's going to be real. They're going to feel it in their healthcare prices. They're going to feel it in their food prices. They're going to see it in a very visible way. And, you know, you talked about the farmers and the ranchers. Beef prices are up right now. We're going into Thanksgiving. Turkey prices are up by almost 40%. And many of the people who, you know, I have great respect for the people who work the land in this country. And many of them supported Donald Trump, thinking that things would be different. And as much respect as I have for them, I'm surprised that they're surprised that he's not showing any respect for them, that he doesn't care for them. Because we've been here before. If you remember in the first administration, the farmers, they lost a large part of their market share to China because of tariffs. And in that case, the Trump administration wound up bailing them out. But even with the bailout, the bulk of that money, it was some $81 billion, $8.4 billion. $8.4 billion went to primarily the biggest farmers. And it's the smallest farmers that really suffer. And I think that there might possibly be, in this very divided moment in America, an opportunity for people who don't normally agree with each other to have some sort of solidarity around this pain point. And you don't want to actually, you know, talk about opportunistic moments in terms of politics, but there actually might be one for Democrats to start to message to people who are in real pain about looking for another path forward to return to some sort of stability and perhaps even sanity in this country.